All right, guys, welcome to Tinfoil Hat, live from the Wise Wolf Gold and Silver Studios. That's right. Just go to samtripoli.gold, use the promo code Tinfoil, and you too can get in on the precious metals game for as little as $50 a month. And we thank Wolfpack Gold for sponsoring the show. Very excited for today's show. She's a former patient that's turned into a researcher. She has a great podcast called Know Better, Do Better. Please welcome Autumn McLees, and he was a doctor. He's still a doctor, but he's now an independent researcher. Please welcome Dr. Mark Bailey. How are you guys?
We are great.
Thank you guys so much. How are you, doctor?
Very good. Thank you, Johnny. Lovely to be here.
Thank you, buddy. Greatly appreciated. Very excited to be here with you guys. Before we start, I'm going to give each one of you guys just a little moment to tell us a little about yourself and where our listeners can start. Doctor, I'm Sam, by the way, and you tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, so basically I was a conventionally trained doctor, and that was in the 1990s when I was at medical school, and graduated in 1999. Now, when I graduated, it corresponded to a period where I was becoming a professional athlete, professional duathlete. It's like triathlon, but without the swimming. And there became a bit of a cognitive dissonance that developed because whilst I was learning about all these pharmaceuticals and interventions and surgical procedures that we were supposed to do on our patients, I was becoming incredibly healthy and fit, obviously, as a high-performance athlete. And many of the things we were being taught was really at odds with what I was finding were the best health and lifestyle practices. So, yeah, right from day one, it was off to a interesting start for me in my medical career. The other issue that I had near the end of my medical training was that I hadn't had all the recommended vaccines. And so they pulled it up on my record and said, I couldn't go into clinical medicine on the hospital wards unless I completed the vaccine schedule. And at that point, I read what we would call anti-vax material. And at the time, I was actually horrified with the whole process of how vaccines were developed and given to us. And I was almost at the point where I wasn't going to take them because I thought there was enough evidence to suggest it was a dangerous, if not unethical, practice. But I was convinced by senior medical colleagues. I had a chat to a few of them, and they said, look, this anti-vax stuff, it's all misinformation. It's been disproven. We got the best people who have researched this and etc. And they said, and otherwise you're not going to be able to continue your medical training and start work as a doctor. So I took the last few vaccines I had to take. And luckily didn't have any terrible effects from those, but that was also one of the speed wobbles coming into this. Now, I did spend 15 years as a doctor in the system. Over that time, a lot of it was whilst being a professional athlete, so I think that kept my sanity. I spent a lot of time away from medicine, doing something else, and could just come back into it and doing bits and pieces. In 2007, I came back into full-time medicine after retiring from my sports career. And straight away, I was finding problems because I didn't find any area that I could work in satisfactorily in terms of not causing problems for the patients. I didn't want to prescribe all these medications or surgical procedures. So I looked around for a while. I even spent time, and I know it seems strange now, as a clinical trials research physician. So this was testing pharmaceuticals for the first time in human volunteers. And that opened my eyes to a whole other aspect of the medico-pharma industry. And that was that there were no good drugs.
Okay. Before we get into that, because I love everything you're saying, this is in my wheelhouse. I just want, before we get into everything, bring in Autumn real quick so she can tell us a little bit about herself, and then we can get into the meat and potatoes, because I'm all about that. Real quick, what was the sport you went pro in?
So it was duathlon.
What is
So
that? I've never heard of that duathlon.
Yeah, it's like cousin. It's like the poor cousin of
Could you
triathlon.
spell it? Because I think this is we're having an accent issue. What could you?
Yeah. It's DU.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Duathlon.
Yeah,
okay,
we're hearing a J instead of a D, and we're incredibly confused.
I've never heard of that, but thank you for clearing that up for us. Thank you. Autumn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so almost about 5 years ago, I went in for some routine labs and out of left field was labeled with a very obscure diagnosis. It's known as hepatitis C. It's a viral condition of what they say is transferred through the blood. And I told the doctor, I said, there's absolutely no way I can have this. Surely they have mixed up my blood results. We need to redo this. So we redid it and it came back. And sure enough, I was positive. Now, if you're not familiar with what hepatitis C is, it's a deadly blood-borne liver disease, essentially.
Right.
And I have not had any possible way I could have contracted it the way that they said. No tattoos, no blood transfusions, never done a drug in my life. My husband and I, we've actually only been with each other and he doesn't have it.
Wow.
So I went into like an identity crisis and I'm like your typical hopeless doom and gloom patient of the allopathic medicine world. We get labeled with something, we get sent on to, pick up our prescription, have a nice life, and that's that. Well, not only was I labeled with this deadly virus, but the medication itself is $80,000.
Damn.
It has a black box warning, and it has a risk of death.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
that's where I found myself until I started researching and woke up and crossed the paths of Dr. Mark Bailey, and his wife is also a doctor, Dr. Sam Bailey, and they're amazing with all of this. And they basically played a role in helping me wake up to they actually don't have an isolated virus of hepatitis C.
And we're in it. Let's go. This is my favorite subject. So your podcast is called?
It's called Know Better, Do Better. It was born because of this journey that I've been on. And, this journey is continuing to unfold.
Okay, great. I just want people to be able to know where they can find you. So when after they hear what you have to say, they can run over there and support you guys. So, Doctor, I cut you off. I didn't mean to do that. I wasn't trying to be mean or anything. I just wanted to get all the information out. So where do you guys want to start? She kind of got into her diagnosis. Is that where you want to jump, or do you want to get back to kind of when you started realizing stuff was getting weird? Because, I've said this before, like when it comes to viruses and stuff like that, if you have a baby and from the moment that baby starts to learn, you teach that baby that red is blue, okay? It's going to be almost impossible to convince them that red is not blue and red is actually red. But because they're trained in this, they're very confident about what they've been told because they trust everybody. So, when you find people who are medical experts telling you something, a lot of it comes from the fact that they were told by people that they trust. And we've seen through the COVID era that a lot of these medical doctors started asking questions and they lost their medical license. So there's a lot of incentives to toe the line. So I want to get back to that whole thing because that really resonated with me that you went to experts to ask questions and bring up criticisms.
Yeah, absolutely. And, coming back to where I was at, I got to 2016 and I was done with medicine. So I quit my clinical practice, gave up my practicing certificate. People thought I was just taking a break. And I said, no, I'm getting out of this. I don't believe in it anymore. I don't believe in the medical system as it is. And I don't think we can help patients. So I'd walked away from it fully, but as was mentioned, my wife Sam, who's a bit younger than me, she was still in her medical career and she was offered this job on network television. So she was saying, okay, well, I can do that as well. And I know it seems very odd now. So in 2019, I've been out of medicine 3 years. Sam's still got a research job, enjoying what she's doing, gets put on network television in this new show they brought out here in New Zealand. And then we get to the end of 2019, and Sam, a friend, said to her, hey, now that you're a TV presenter, you should start your own YouTube channel. And Sam was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a try. She starts making videos, and we start getting feedback from people saying, hey, look, I know you guys think you're highly trained, but you've been misled on a number of areas, and you need to start doing your own research. And we were like, whoa. Initially, we dismissed it and thought, well, hey, we're the experts here. We know what we're talking about. But Sam started looking into some of these things and realized, oh my goodness, we'd been misled as medical doctors, that a lot of research had actually been hidden from us. And we'd been told narratives that didn't stack up when it came to the scientific literature. So then she starts this YouTube channel, and it starts getting a lot of traction. Like thousands of people sometimes a day are joining the channel, because I think they can see that, hey, here's a doctor that's about to spill the beans. And people are like thinking this is going to be great. And then we start getting the questions about the situation in Wuhan. And people say, look, they're saying there's this new entity, some disease, it's contagious. And by then, Sam's overwhelmed with her new channel. And she asked me, she said, can you come and help me? And I was initially reluctant, because I'd walked away from medicine, almost 4 years earlier. And I said, okay, well, I'll have a look into it. And I started looking into the COVID situation. And within a short time, I came back to Sam and I said, there's nothing scientific to this entire thing. This is, early 2020. I said the WHO is putting out statements. They're just opinion pieces. They don't have proper scientific references. I think there's a problem not only with the COVID narrative, but then soon after we realized there was a problem with the whole contagion virus pathogen narrative as well. And we were shocked, and it was such a turning point in our lives that we couldn't believe that we'd been brought into this world of medicine with all these paradigms that were simply untrue. So that really led us to completely abandon, I'd already obviously got out of it, but then Sam had to get out as well. And she became one of the most prosecuted doctors in New Zealand's history, not because any patient of hers ever complained. She never had one complaint, but because of the material that we were publishing. And we quickly came to realize that once you go against the virus model, the germ theory model, and the vaccine model, and which is basically the medico-pharmaceutical industry, they come after you. And the censorship became extreme for us, and we still managed to reach millions of people in 2020 and onwards. But yeah, that brought us into this new paradigm. And amazingly, it brought us into contact with people like Autumn, who knew that something was wrong with the narratives. And obviously hers was not the COVID narrative, helped wake up Autumn as well. But she was diagnosed with hepatitis C and thought, how does this make sense? It does not make sense. And it made sense when she found the research of Sam and I and others like Tom Cowan, Andy Kaufman, the Perth Group, etc. Suddenly things, I think, started making sense for her.
Yes. It's always interesting because when the Wuhan narrative comes out, it's very similar to the SARS pandemic. It was what was it? 201, Agenda 201, yeah. Almost step for step, but they started in Latin America. That was their little, shoulder fake on us. It's in Latin America. It's not in Asia. But what I always found very interesting is that there was never, ever, ever a story told to us about how the virus got away from Wuhan. We never, ever found that out, right? And I always take the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark when the Nazis open up the chest and the ghost comes, and I go, footage, CCTV footage from Wuhan on how the virus got away, because they never told us. The most important thing of how did this virus escape was never explained. Did someone drop some kind of vial or something like that? Nothing. Nobody ever told us that. It just came from Wuhan, and that was the That's what. Well, first it came from a wet market. Then it's like, fine, we'll tell you, it was a medical lab in Wuhan. So sorry, you got us, which is hilarious in itself. So, do you find that weird at all, Doctor?
Yeah, well, that was the first red flag for us. Was as doctors, we thought, what entity makes people walk down the street and just drop dead? Seemingly otherwise healthy people. What kind of condition is this? Apart from chemical poisoning, there's nothing else you can really think of that would do that. So yeah, instantly the narrative made no sense. And the other problem, and I've written essays about this, was that these so-called cover-ups of lab leaks, etc., were being promoted in early 2020 and massively promoted. They were allowed to go out to millions of people. And so what they did is they created a couple of options for people. One was that, there was a wet market incident that possibly from a bat cave 1,000 miles away, and various animals were involved, and it was some sort of zoonotic event where an animal entity jumped into the human population. So that was one of the ones they put forward. And then the other was, well, hang on a minute, there's this Wuhan Institute of Virology, and what goes on there? And we had all this staged stuff. So there was China Daily, which is the communist Chinese government news platform. In 2018, they were pumping out pictures of all their, quote, viruses in their lab, showing off, they were saying, we've got all these coronaviruses we're doing work on. This was all over the internet. And then in 2020, oh my goodness, they quickly took those images down. But the images were still everywhere. You could just go to archive.org or anywhere else to have a look at them. And and then a whole lot of people who thought that they were uncovering the truth got completely duped into this narrative that the reason they were, covering things up was that because Ralph Barrick and Anthony Fauci and others had been funding research and it had gone out of control, and either accidentally or intentionally someone had leaked one of these so-called viruses and it escaped and caused this worldwide problem. So these narratives were promoted, they were planted, and essentially the population was given two choices, either the wet market theory, zoonotics jump, or the lab leak, intentional versus accidental. Those of us that could see right through the scientific material could say it's neither of those. There is nothing. There's no new disease. There's no isolation of any virus. All that they had was a new PCR test that came out 2 months before the WHO even declared the fake pandemic. I mean, these tests were ready to roll in mid-January. And if you look at the timeline, that makes no sense either, that they said that they found a virus before they'd even published anything in the scientific literature. I think they got so excited with what was happening and that they were getting so much buy-in across the world that they got quite sloppy, even with the timeline, and it was completely unrealistic.
I find it very interesting. There, one thing that I heard on a friend of mine's show, Jimmy Dore, he had a guest, Ron Placone, on. Ron said something very profound on the show, and it was like oligarchies help oligarchies, right? And, there's a lot of discussion about how many people have kind of vanished in China right now since the beginning of the COVID vaccine. And it's a big number. It's shocking how big the number is, like we've never seen before. And so this becomes kind of this game that's getting played with the United States and China working together to kind of sell this narrative to their population, and how they slow rolled it out to America was, there's these Chinese people falling in the middle of the street. We don't know what. Well, now we think it's this COVID thing. Then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it's COVID, dude. It's China. It's all over there. And then they kind of go, hey, don't worry about it. It's just an Asian disease. You'll be fine. It's just the Asians and the Chinese. And that's how they get you. Once they get you to accept it for someone else, you're kind of trapped. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, an American got it. Now you're trapped because it's real in your head. And now it's a real situation. And we never even saw anybody falling. until people got the vaccine. That's when we realized. That's when we started seeing people falling. So I find everything you're saying very interesting to me. Now, Autumn, when did your diagnosis come before or after COVID?
It was in 2021, so I'm coming up on 5 years.
So before that, did the COVID narrative kind of get a hold of you?
It did at first because I didn't know. We'd obviously never gone through anything like that. So I didn't know like what was going on or what to expect. But slowly but surely, I started to wake up, and not to the extent that I am now of like viruses, in my opinion, like literally don't exist. I have never seen any evidence. That's what Dr. Bailey is here for as well. He has never seen any evidence of a virus existing. But it warmed me up, we'll just say, for sure, to eventually receive this diagnosis.
Hey, guys, we've been telling you this for years, and boy, were we right. Precious metals, where it's at, it's the best place to store your money, to stabilize it before they just print us out of existence. And that's why we love Wolf Pack Gold. Let me tell you about Wise Wolf Gold and Silver and their Wolf Pack program. Let me tell you about it real quick. If you're paying attention, you know that de-dollarization is real. Fiat is fake, and you don't want to be left holding the bag when the dollar collapses. Gold and silver has been money through all of recorded history and are an excellent way to protect yourself from inflation and geopolitical turmoil. That's why I trust my friends at Wise Wolf Gold and Silver for all things precious metal. Veteran-owned and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau. No transaction is too big or too small, and you can even roll over your 401k or IRA into physical gold and silver. And if you think you can't afford precious metals, think again. With the Wolf Pack monthly membership program, you can get gold and silver delivered directly to your door for as little as $50 a month. Wise Wolf Gold and Silver also deals in and accepts Bitcoin. So go to samtripoli.gold, promo code tinfoil at checkout to receive free constitutional silver. And remember, in the world of bulls and bears, be the wolf. Guys, it is cold out. Some places it's warm out. You need the right clothes for the right situation. And there's no better place to go than Quince. We're talking high standard clothing at low prices. Let me tell you about Quince. A well-built wardrobe is about pieces that work together and hold up over time. That's what Quince does best. Premium materials, thoughtful designs, and everyday staples that feel easy to wear and easy to rely on even as the weather shifts.
Quince has everyday essentials that I love with quality that lasts. They have organic cotton sweaters, polos for every occasion, and even lighter jackets that keep you warm in the changing seasons. The list goes on. Quince works directly with top factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're not paying for brand markup. You just get quality clothing. Everything is built to hold up to daily wear and still look good season after season. Plus, they only partner with factories that meet rigorous standards for craftsmanship and ethical production.
Guys, I look good. I mean, whether it's their sweaters, their slacks, I'm look like a man on the go who knows what he's doing in life. Even though I'm white knuckling it, I look like I know what to know. Okay, and that's why we need you to do this. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/tinfoil hat for free shipping on your order. And listen to this: 365-day returns. Come on now.
Wow.
Now available in Canada. Yeah, you're welcome, Canada. That's how nice we are here at Tinfoil Hat. We talk to them. We go, we got a lot of people in Canada. Can you take care of them? We're like, we're right on it, Mr. Tripoli. We're right on it, okay? So that's QUINCE.com/tinfoil hat. Free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/tinfoil hat. So when it was all going down, you were buying it, and then all of a sudden your situation happened with Hep C, and they kind of opened your eyes to maybe there's some dirty work going on here.
Yeah, and honestly, there wasn't a lot of literature out there for hepatitis C. I mean, some scientific references, but there was actually more challenging the narrative of HIV. So I actually started looking into HIV. And one of the things that I learned, the first thing that actually made me question, I learned that you could test positive for HIV here in the US and test negative in another country. And I thought, hold up, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And since these two are somewhat similar in the sense that they're bloodborne and they're viruses floating around and duplicating and replicating in the blood, then I kind of, looked a little bit deeper into HIV where I could, but I was still looking for information for hepatitis C. And, Dr. Bailey's wife, Dr. Sam Bailey, is actually the co-author of a book called Virus Mania. And there's a chapter in there that talks about hepatitis C. So I actually invited her on the podcast. She came on, we hashed it out, and yeah, there's no denying it. And I've looked at the research now myself. They're not pulling they're not pulling a virus out of my blood. They're not doing such a thing. They're not finding a virus. But yet they get to label me with this. And so many people are labeled with viruses. And it's not to say that they don't have symptoms or that they, might have some health problems. But as far as the viral narrative goes, are they really pulling a virus out of the blood? No, they're not.
Is it two different tests? Because you said in Europe or somewhere else it's different. Is it two different tests or is it
thresholds?
Is there a different protocol or why is it completely different?
Yeah, perhaps I can comment on that. Because the issue with AIDS is a syndrome, so it's not a specific entity anyway. And that was part of the scam in the 1980s, was that there was no new disease. There was just reclassification of old diseases into a new umbrella term called AIDS, which is a syndrome. So what happened was that initially they would do blood tests, and with any blood test that involves an antibody, you've got to set it at a certain level. And if they set the level too sensitive, everybody's positive, because this is not a yes-no thing. It's not you do have the protein or you don't have it. It's different levels that you might have at a particular time. So what they found was that if they set the test at certain levels, they got way too many positives. And if they set it too high, they didn't get any. So then they had to kind of adjust the tests depending on where they were in the world, because different places would have different results. But then what happened is that in places like Africa, they decided that you could just have a presentation like weight loss and diarrhea, and they'd say that's it, that's HIV positive. Whereas if you were in a country like New Zealand or the United States, particularly in higher socioeconomic areas, you'd only be classified, it wouldn't matter what symptoms you had to have 2 positive tests in sequence with assays that were set at reasonably high levels. So that's why you could move from country to country and be positive. Like Autumn said, it's preposterous. You could go from one country where you're so-called not HIV positive and then go to another country where they say, no, now you are HIV positive. So, yeah. And we have to keep in mind, like Autumn mentioned, they're not finding a virus. They're finding a blood test result that they do in a laboratory. So like a protein reaction result. And we know with so-called AIDS, for HIV positive tests, there's like dozens and dozens of conditions where you'll be positive. Like even pregnancy can make a woman return a positive HIV assay. So yeah, in short, there's more to it than that. The background is appalling to this. It went on for years, this fraud, and goes on to this day. But in summary, that's why you can be positive somewhere and not somewhere else.
And the same with steroids. Steroids can actually cause a positive antibody test for hepatitis C, I learned. And so, we're just really here to blow the whistle, because I was trusting of this. I mean, I almost let them label me, and I almost believed I was on my way out of this world. And to know that this appears to be just pseudoscience, And yet people believe it, and they're under the spell and the trance of the man in the white coat and what he proclaims, death or life over your life. I mean, it's ludicrous.
Yeah. I forget what Monica Perez called it. Like, when we were like, oh, trust doctors. And they're like, they're the only ones who get to look through the microscope, right? They're like the priests of the high microscope.
Yeah, the high priest of the microscope.
The high priest of the microscope. And we just take it. And it's so crazy that you talk about hepatitis C, because I remember, like, I'd say 10 or 15 years ago, Anthony Kiedis was diagnosed with Hep C. And then all of a sudden, there was all these articles about, oh, yeah, he doesn't have it anymore. They kind of cured it. And they just cleaned his blood out. And I'm like, that sounds like really weird to me that you could do that. And it probably just, to me, was he had enough money to pay somebody to say that he wasn't hepatitis C, sick anymore. So and this does come down, right, guys, to money and why people don't say anything, because their jobs depend on it.
Do you think that's the same thing with Magic Johnson? Kind of money and didn't say anything about it because he has to play the narrative?
Well, I think someone who cared about Magic Johnson pulled him aside to go, don't take this drug. It's what's going to kill you. And that's why he quit Bush's AIDS panel that he was named to. He quit all that. And, it used to be a hacky joke in stand-up comedy about how everybody wanted to get Magic Johnson AIDS because that came with $1 billion, right? So, it's very interesting, the game that is getting played. So, Johnny is our resident devil's advocate when it comes to a lot of these things. He likes to ask questions. Johnny, do you have any questions so far?
He doesn't like it. No, he doesn't.
You kind of put him on the spot.
I would ask, okay, you mentioned these assays. Now, are these similar? Are these standards also applied to diagnosing bacterial infections? Like the same thresholds?
No, they're somewhat separate, because with bacteria, they've obviously been shown to exist. And this is the big thing. Now, one of the things that I've written about in my critiques of virology is that virology invented itself as a field before they even knew. They hadn't even established, basically, that viruses existed, and then the field launched itself. That's a problem compared to bacteriology, where with the development of the light microscope, they were taking samples from nature, from humans, and they could actually see bacteria. And the bacteria under the light microscope, we can see that they divide, they metabolize things. We can see that they're living entities and that they do exist. So the issue with virology is that they didn't go out in nature and find any of these entities that meet the definition of a virus. They just assumed that they were there. And then with the invention of the electron microscope in the 1930s, it should have ended virology once and for all, because they were taking samples from people said to have viral illnesses, but then they couldn't find any viruses or anything different from taking samples from people that were said not to have viral illnesses. So that was a major problem. But eventually, to get to your question about antibodies, they became a big thing with so-called viral entities, because an antibody test is an indirect test, and that means that you have to be very careful, because it doesn't actually rely on the presence of what you think it does. So in the case of an antibody test, it relies on the presence of a protein. Now, we're not denying the existence of proteins. You are going to find them everywhere in living systems. What we say is that there's no evidence whatsoever that they come from a virus. But in a case like Autumn, that's what's happened, is that she went in and had some blood tests, and then they said, oh, you're positive for hepatitis C antibodies, which they say her body's making proteins in response to the hepatitis C virus. But the hepatitis C virus doesn't exist. There's no paper on Earth which shows that. So that is the issue with antibodies. Yeah, so it's a bit different than bacteria, where you can actually go and find the entity itself. Now, we're not saying that bacteria cause disease; they may be associated with it, but that's where the two diverge.
So, and what is it that they claim to have imaged using electron microscopes? What would you say electron microscopy is a fraudulent field as a whole? I'm
it's
curious.
exosomes.
Exosomes is what. Yeah, I'm curious what they think about that.
Yeah, I would not make any conclusions about what is being imaged. There's a major issue with electron microscopy, and there is no gold standard. We can't validate it against living systems. So the nature of, unlike a light microscope, where you can take living tissue and look at it, like I said earlier, you can see bacterial cells and microbes. With electron microscopy, the nature of it is very different. So first you have to take the sample, you process it, you expose it to a number of different chemicals, you need to dehydrate it, you need to embed it in resin, you need to cut it incredibly thinly, and then you need to put it under what they call an electron beam, some sort of energy beam, and then that process generates an image. Now, whether that represents living biology, it remains to be known, because there's no way to check it. But the images you see, when we are shown an image of what they say a virus looks like, we would just say, well, it's just a vesicle, if it exists, if it's not an artifact.
What about like TMV? What about like tobacco mosaic virus, which is it's one of the earliest things imaged? What would you say those images are? Because those are one of the few. I know they're in plants, but they're one of the few things that they call a virus that we have seen. Do you have a thought?
Yeah, totally. So that's an example of something where most of the time they can't purify anything. That's the problem, because they just have a biological soup.
Yeah.
But sometimes with things like so-called tobacco mosaic virus, they can actually purify something, like these crystalline structures, and people will say, well, there it is. That's what it is. The problem again is that what they image is not shown to have the properties of a virus. So it's not shown to be able to be replication competent, end up in more copies of itself. It's not shown to be contagious in terms of able to naturally pass from one tobacco plant to the other. None of that has been shown. Instead, they have these bits and pieces of scientific literature, including those imaging studies, where we get sent those pictures and say, well, what's this? And we just say what it is. It's an electron microscopy image, and just describe what the structure looks like. But then the biological function remains to be seen. You can't make that conclusion just by looking at those images. So that is the issue, is that if something has been purified, some sort of particles, there's still no experiment that shows those things are contagious and disease-causing. They might be related to disease. It might be something that the plant accumulates in response to a disease state. We're not denying that. But you have to remember that the definition of a virus is very specific, and we've seen nothing that meets that definition.
I do have a follow-on question from that. Then, what would you say accounts for the transmission patterns that we do observe? That gets really to the heart of this, I think.
Yeah. So coming back to tobacco mosaic virus, if you look at the original experiments which we've done and had them translated into English, they couldn't demonstrate transmission. What happened was that Ivanovsky and the other researchers in the 1890s, they actually tried growing the plants in the same pot together, and they took one disease plant and then put it in a pot with a normal plant. And even when the roots were intertwined and the leaves were touching, they could not transmit anything. So no transmission occurred. What they thought they were observing was transmission in nature, because one plant would become affected in a certain area, and then quite a lot of plants in that area would also become affected. But they were under the same environmental conditions. And Ivanovsky even admits as much in his conclusion. He talks about that the unfortunately, he introduces this word virus and says that the virus only seems to affect plants in certain areas under certain conditions. And you're like, well, what's the point of the virus? You don't need to enter that into the story. It's what those of us would call terrain. We say it's the terrain. And yes, it's likely that plants in a certain area will have, the same soil conditions, moisture conditions, temperature, humidity, exposure to chemicals, pollutions, etc. So and the way that the quote transmission was achieved was that they took a diseased plant and they extracted sap from it, and then they filtered it a little, and then they traumatized another plant and introduced the diseased liquid into that plant. And they said, oh, look, that makes the other plant sick. But that's not natural. That doesn't happen in nature. It requires, you have to traumatize the healthy plant. Yeah. And they also report in their studies, you can read it, that the more, quote, virus the plant got depended on how much damage you did to the plant, mechanical damage, like breaking its leaves and damaging its stalk, etc. So that's, this is where it's all been perverted, and all so-called transmission studies you see in virology are not achieved through what they say are viral particles, and they're not achieved through natural exposure. They're using these artificial routes, which is not valid because, it's when you take a biological mix of things and inject it into something else, obviously that can cause problems. It's nothing to do with contagion.
Now, sorry, Sam, can I just really quick, I just want to get to that. Could you, we've had guests on who've said that there is this kind of liminal microbe that's connected somehow to snake venom that accounts for a lot of infection.
If I was a judge, I would strike that question.
What do you,
I would strike
what's your opinion on that theory of infection?
Well, there's separate things. I mean, snake venom is a biological toxin, and similar to bee venom. And the way it works is it needs to be injected into another organism. So, for instance, if we even if we swallowed snake venom, it probably wouldn't do anything. But once it's injected into our bodies, it's incredibly toxic and can be fatal. But that has nothing to do with microorganisms. That's a biochemical toxicity and poisoning.
I mean, are you familiar with that theory that COVID especially is the result of widespread kind of?
No, that falls apart because you still need to inject something. So it wouldn't matter if they had snake venom and they had hundreds of planes.
I think the suspicion is that it is in the vaccines,
the COVID shot.
Yeah, and the shots.
That would be a waste of time because when, bioweapons are an interesting subject because we have so many videos that we made on this subject because they captivate people's attention, and there's so many movies that Hollywood have put out about this stuff, and governments have spent millions, probably billions of dollars trying to develop them, and they don't work. You look at all of their biological weapons programs and nothing. They're so ineffective because chemical weapons are 100,000 times more effective and
that's so interesting.
Oh wow!
And way cheaper. So we do in some of Sam's presentations. She's contrasted the attempts to do biological warfare versus chemical. Chemical is so incredibly devastating, and they have substances where if you get one drop on your skin, you're going to die. There's nothing that
of
can
course
save
all those
you.
movies like The Rock and all that shit. They want you. Yeah, of course they are. That makes
so
but
beautiful.
Biological. Even if you'd have to have hundreds of millions of snakes to produce enough venom, unless you could synthesize it another way. And then even if you had planes everywhere dispersing it and putting it everywhere, it wouldn't do anything because it needs to be injected to be toxic. But putting it in the COVID jabs, I mean, that would, cost-wise, that would be horrendous. There'd be no way that Pfizer and co would be interested in such a process. I mean, the COVID jabs were the most profitable pharmaceutical of all time. if you look at how much money they made, it wasn't costing them much to make those things, and the profits were no one's ever seen anything like it before.
Hey guys, real quick, I'll tell you about our good friends at Superpower. Listen, your health is the most important thing, and you got to constantly check to make sure your body is running right, okay? And that's where Superpower comes in, okay? Superpower, they basically believe humans could live 100 years if they took care of their bodies right, dude. That's what we all have that potential in us for sure. You just need to get the right help, okay? In the future, you're just going to be laughing about how ridiculous healthcare was in the back in the day. Superpower is going to change the way you deal with your health, okay? And they're the best at it, right?
Yeah, Superpower will send a licensed professional to your home, or you can visit a nearby lab. It's one simple blood draw with more than 100 biomarkers, which is way more than what you usually get, and it's a way to unlock a real understanding of your body. Their app includes detailed info on your heart, liver, thyroid, hormones, metabolism, vitamin and mineral levels, and even environmental toxins. So from disease prevention to treating that annoying brain fog, or simply optimizing your gym game, Superpower is the most comprehensive and advanced system out there. Superpower doesn't just give you a one-time snapshot, though. That's the thing about Superpower. It tracks your results over your lifetime. Each test is another data point, builds on the last, so you can actually see progress year after year instead of just starting over every January. Superpower used to cost $499, but right now it's just $199 for the full experience. That's more affordable than anything else out there. Other testing services charge $500, $1,000, sometimes even more for similar or fewer test results. Know what your numbers are with Superpower.
Make this the year you stop guessing about your health with Superpower. Not only did Superpower reduce the price to just $199, but for a limited time, our listeners get an additional $20 off with code TINFOIL. All right? Head to Superpower, just like it sounds, spelled just like it sounds, .com and use the code TINFOIL at checkout for $20 off membership. After you sign up, they'll ask you how you heard about them. So make sure to mention this podcast to support the show, and we thank them for sponsoring the show. Real quick, I want to have an important conversation with you, and that's about life insurance. You know, people don't want to talk about, but it's very important, okay? Especially if you have kids. You want to take care of your children. If you're a dad or a mom and you're taking care of your kids financially and something unfortunately happens to you, who's going to take care of your kids? And that's why I want to tell you about our good friends at Ethos, okay? Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exams. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, okay? Some policies are as low as $30 a month. Ethos has a 4.8 of 5-star on Trustpilot and over 3,000 reviews. So here's what we need you to do. Help protect your family with life insurance through Ethos. Get your instant free quote at ethos.com/tinfoil. That is ethos.com/tinfoil. Application times and rates may vary, and we thank them for sponsoring the show. So when, we've had other doctors on discussing it. It's one of my favorite topics. I go on other shows, say I don't believe in viruses, and their just jaws drop and they look at me like a Neanderthal and stuff like that. But I'm okay with that. That's just life, and I deal with this every time a new psyop comes out. So Andrew Kaufman put out this video where these articles would come out and say, oh, they isolated the COVID virus. And so because he's like you, he knows what he's looking for. He'll read the article, look at their citations, go to the citation, study the actual research. And at the end, they always say, this does not prove Koch's postulates. So I would like to ask you, because I can't remember the name, but I know there's Koch's postulates. And then later on, they came up with something like Rivers Requirements. Have you heard something like that? Or what was the actual name where like 20 years later, like, okay, we can't prove it with this. Let's have another guy come up with something that sounds like it's the same thing, but actually makes it so much easier for them to prove that a virus exists. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we know this history extremely well. And Koch's postulates were scientifically formulated and they're valid because they use a scientific method. They're put together in a way where you can falsify the hypothesis. So there was nothing wrong with it. But the problem Koch had was that he couldn't demonstrate it for anything. And that's where the history books are wrong. He never showed that mycobacterium could cause tuberculosis. His experiments didn't work on that at all. And the problem is that generally you find these microbes in healthy specimens as well as in sick ones. So that's a violation of the first postulate. So now that for the audience, we've looked at hundreds of these studies and we can say nothing has ever fulfilled Koch's postulates. Now, if the study says that it has, it's through deception. So, for instance, there's no valid control. That's a classic one with bacteria. But with virology, you've got a different problem. And yes, they realized that they were never going to fulfill Koch's postulates for anything, but to create a smokescreen with virology. In the 1930s, Rivers introduced a new set of postulates, which was basically a bit looser than Koch's postulates, but nobody fulfilled Rivers' postulates either. And that's quite obvious in virology because they don't find virus to begin with. So, and I don't know, you have some of these things that have been out there for a century, and I don't know if I was the first one to articulate that around 2020, but I said that it wouldn't even matter having debates around Koch's or Rivers' postulates when it comes to viruses because you don't have the entity to start with. And the assumption of those postulates is that you have to start with the entity. So you have to find it in nature, which is what they do with bacteria and fungal cells. You can find them in nature and then you can run these tests. But when I got deeper into this, and a lot of people in 2020 started questioning virology and the cell culture process and said that they're not isolating anything. They're not doing a physical isolation. And we'd worked out that, yes, there's no way they're not doing control experiments. And we were holding their feet to the fire, saying to the virologists, where are the control experiments? Or tell us about your control experiments. And we'd write to them and they'd never get back, or they'd show us supplementary material which didn't show a control experiment. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, wait a minute, there's a fundamental problem with virology, and that's that they cannot do a control experiment. That is the overriding problem. It's bigger than the isolation issue. And I wrote a paper called Virology's Event Horizon to show that the whole thing is based on a logical fallacy because you never found the entity in nature to begin with. So that's why I called it the Event Horizon. It's beyond our possibilities of knowledge if we don't find the entity in nature. You can't. What it involves is what we call a reification fallacy, where you hypothesize something and then make it real just because you say it is, and then you start doing some experiments as though you've already established it was real.
The emperor's new clothes. That's basically what it is. The emperor's new clothes. We all agree the emperor's got great clothes on, so we all do it. Auburn, you want to say
exactly.
something?
Yeah,
I was just going to say, I wanted to break this down for people real simple so that they can understand. So it's basically like what they would do in the wet lab is, I'll use me for an example. They, would take blood from someone that, had suspicious symptoms. They mix it with chemicals and dyes and potentially monkey kidney cells and antibiotics. And then they watch the blood express with these cytopathic effects. And then they say, oh, those cytopathic effects, that's caused from a virus. Not, let's take your blood, oh, here's the virus. Here it is all over the place because it's supposed to be duplicating and replicating. And that's what's, going to kill me one day. no, they can't find a virus. They have to mix my blood in a toxic soup.
Yeah.
So then it expresses, and then they say, that's it right there. That a virus caused that.
It's like convicting someone on circumstantial evidence. They're like, we don't have the gun or the body, but here's all these other elements that basically say that this person is the murderer. So it's the same thing. It's so toxic, and look at its reaction. And by this thing that we say exists, this is what it would cause. So therefore, it's there.
Yeah, and as I say, it's embedded in a complete logical fallacy, and it's not a scientific thing, because what Autumn said, they're seeing effects of a cellular breakdown. So that's the dependent variable in the experiment, is the appearance of what they say are viruses. But then they're claiming that's the independent variable. That's what they started with. You can't do that. You can't conflate the two and say that the dependent variable and the independent variable are the same thing. That's scientific nonsense. And that's why I pointed that out a few years ago and said we don't even need to, the cell culture experiment, we don't even need to look at what their result is. They can say what the result, whatever they want, whatever the virologists claim, we can just say it's a logical fallacy, because those particles that are appearing cannot be the dependent and the independent variable at the same time. The only way around this, and this is what it comes back to for someone like Autumn and the diagnosis, is that they have to take her blood and just find the viruses. But we know that they can't do that. They're telling her, you have Hep C, you've got this viral load, which is nothing of the sort, but that's what they've been telling her. And these are the levels of viruses that you've got circulating in your bloodstream. But it's all based on this logical fallacy. They don't find the virus. Instead, what they do is just test her blood with antibody assays and PCR.
Something I've wondered. Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
I was just saying, can I say, guys, that you don't even have to have liver problems to be diagnosed with hepatitis C. Make sense. It's a bloodborne liver disease, but yet some people's liver is perfectly healthy and fine. Yeah. So once again,
it's like COVID
science
where they say, sorry to cut you off. It's like,
it's the old asymptomatic carrier.
Yeah.
We got to watch out, guys.
You have COVID. One of the symptoms of COVID is not having symptoms.
And we have to watch out for people like Autumn, because not only is she asymptomatic and doesn't have these health problems, but she's probably a super spreader. She's probably spreading this stuff.
Autumn, the super spreader.
You brought up symptoms. My question was related to symptoms, because there are some so-called viruses that cause incredibly unique symptoms. Like rabies, they say, causes hydrophobia, right? People are literally become afraid of water. What in your model, what would account for these really uncommon and specific symptoms like that?
Yeah, so rabies is such an interesting one that my wife Sam put out a video called "But What About Rabies?" because that's the most. It's a comment that just kept appearing over and over and over again on our platforms. And so finally we had to do this video to address rabies. Now, rabies is, totally fascinating, because one is that the vast majority of times, like that you get bitten by a dog that's said to have rabies, you don't get sick at all. That's not a thing. So this narrative that we've been told that if a dog bites you and if it's salivating and stuff, you're probably going to die. The reason that's so damaging is it's not a biological scientific thing. It actually becomes a psychological thing where people actually panic and think that they are going to die. So that's one thing. And the psychological expectations are absolutely enormous. Now, I don't know if you've heard of a book called Can You Catch a Cold? But the author, a friend of ours, Daniel Reuters, he writes showing, he exposes research which showed that if you give someone water or saline water and tell them that it's chemotherapy, like for cancer, their hair will fall out and they'll start vomiting, even though they've just been given water. That's how powerful it is, these expectations. So when you've got a narrative that if you get bitten by a dog, you're going to get rabies, some people do get incredibly sick. The other thing is that rabies is so rare. You're more likely, obviously, to get hit by a car or struck by lightning or have any of these other things happen to you. Like, for instance, in New Zealand's history, I don't even know, I think we checked it, there might have been one case attributed to rabies in New Zealand's entire history. And even in a country as big as the United States, it's so incredibly rare. Now, rabies is a clinical condition. And as we mentioned earlier on in this podcast, we're not saying that people don't get sick. We're just saying that it is not a virus. And when it comes to rabies, we went back through the original studies starting from Pasteur in the late 1800s onwards. And again, you've got the same issue. Not once do they show that it's an entity that is consistent with what is known as a virus. All they have is biological soups, which they inject into the brains of other animals. And if the animal gets sick or has a seizure or gets paralyzed, they claim that that must be the virus, when obviously there's no control experiment. It's not a natural exposure route, and it cannot possibly back up this viral hypothesis. So, yeah, but what I would say is if people want to learn about the scientific details of rabies, then watch my wife Sam's video, But What About Rabies, because it addresses all of the ins and outs of that entire world.
Well,
she's got a great library of resources over there for anyone that wants to further educate themselves past this interview.
Well, I asked, okay, so if it is psychosomatic in humans, what then of the symptoms of rabies in animals?
No, I'm not saying it's always psychosomatic. I'm just saying that people can get sick and manifest symptoms that they think they are going to manifest simply based on expectations.
Right, but don't dogs show symptoms of hydrophobia? I'm just curious how that your model would account for
definitely
being
yeah
afraid of water.
Yep. No, to us that would be consistent. Like, it's a case by case, because when we say that the claim that that rabies is a specific disease, if you actually look at the way it's classified, it's not. It can have all sorts of it's basically a bit of an umbrella term, and the presentations can be very different. So it can be anything from fever and muscle aches and joint pains.
But do you have a guess at what the pathology is of hydrophobia specifically, like that symptom? What could possibly cause such a thing?
Yeah, like we would say something like a biological toxin. So, like someone gets a snake bite, for instance, that can cause paralysis and death and all those sorts of things, and tissue death, etc. So I would say that in some cases rabies is something similar, like the animal has been poisoned, either like by chemical poison, a man-made one, or through some sort of biological toxin. Like it's eaten or been bitten by something, and a biological toxin like a venom has been introduced. And when Sam and I did the research into this, we found that there were biological toxins that have been found in nature. You get things like poisonous fish and obviously snake venom, etc. And many of the symptoms that are put down to rabies could be secondary to such toxicity.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating, dude, because it gets back again to poison almost. But so I'm in recovery. I've been sober for many years now. I would go to meetings. There were gay men there, and they would always talk about losing so many people to AIDS. They would talk about it all the time. And, over the years, we've had discussions on it. Autoimmune deficiency. I think that's very important when you talk about this, because it's basically talking, correct me if I'm wrong, that your white blood cell count is very low, and that could be part of what they're tagging you with. I tell this story. I'd like to tell it to you. One day I wasn't feeling good. My girlfriend told me to go to the doctor, and the doctors wanted to run blood tests on me. And I'm sitting in a room. I just gave blood, and the doctor comes in and I'm all by myself. And he asked me if I'm straight or gay. And I took that as a compliment. That meant I was in good shape, right? But I found that question very interesting because I wonder what the test would come back if I'd answered gay. What would have happened at that moment if I would have said gay? Because I thought that was illegal to do that, to ask me personal questions like that. But to me, that seems like, you brought up that bioweapons aren't really effective, or they've never been able to create them. But part of me wonders if things like, the COVID shot and stuff like that could be seen as a bioweapon. And AZT is a cancer drug, but if you're kind of using it in a way to get people to take this cancer drug for the rest of their lives. Like once people are done with cancer, they stop taking cancer drugs. But with AIDS, they were just taking it for the rest of their life. And then it's almost like what we're seeing with Ozempic right now, right? Like these people are on Ozempic for too long and then they're now starting to look like characters from a Tim Burton movie. And you're like, that does not look healthy at all. And so, going back to Magic Johnson, Freddie Mercury was diagnosed right around the same time.
So was Eazy-E.
What?
Eazy-E, remember the rapper?
So I feel like those three, two of them kept taking it, one of them stopped. Do you think that because it's like within the gay community they're doing a lot of what they call poppers, they're doing intravenous drug use, and I think that just destroys your immune system. And they would go in after a crazy weekend of just going cranking it up, and they would come back and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're HIV positive," and when in reality they had just gone through a crazy week of partying. And they just got caught at the wrong time. So what are your thoughts on that? Either of you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. These are lifestyle things. And but we need to distinguish between, biological toxins and chemical ones. And so obviously drugs come under chemical toxins. Yeah. And most drugs are, petrochemical derivatives. And they're not designed to be in our body. And the first thing our body does is try to get rid of them, essentially. Now, your AZT is so toxic that, it was horrendous what happened in the 1980s when they were giving people high doses of this stuff because it was making them incredibly sick. And when they went back to see the doctor would just say, well, that's because the virus is, destroying your system, basically. And, we might need to up the dose or, try putting you on a secondary medication as well. So, yeah, the medications themselves are incredibly toxic and people start to conflate the manifestations with some fake virus, The same thing happens in psychiatry to this day where a lot of people who are, said to have, they say, look at this person, they've clearly got lots of mental disorder going on. A lot of it is simply the side effects of the medications that they've been put on, which slows down their thinking, causes them to have partial paralysis or excessive movements, all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, we have to be very careful about conflating, the presentation with the actual drugs that the person's been put on. Coming back to your question about why they asked you whether you're gay or not, the issue here is that receptive anal sex is associated with HIV assay positivity. And that's something which is significant because when it comes to HIV antibodies, we say that there's no HIV. There's no virus that's been shown to exist, but we're not saying that there might not be some significant issue with HIV positivity. Like a lot of people that have HIV positive antibody results do have underlying sickness and they can be incredibly unwell. Some of them are not. Some of them are completely asymptomatic, or they might just have another condition, like we mentioned earlier, like pregnancy, say. So, yeah, we have to be careful about what we're talking about. But, yeah, they know there are certain questions that they will ask, like what your sexual practices are, whether you take IV drugs, etc., because some of them are associated with changes in your health outcomes. And yeah, they're more likely to say that you have something based on lifestyle rather than the test necessarily, or even whether they do these tests or not is based on the boxes that you tick, which indicate what kind of lifestyle you have.
What?
That's the real problem that I will say that I have with this, with the allopathic medicine model in general, is because these floating germs and viruses, they keep us from actually getting curious, actually get curious about what's causing us to be sick. It takes away the need for stewardship and thinking back to what could have caused this. And instead, we just jump right into the palm of their hand and take a medication. For me, the best I can come up with is I might have been, I think they call it floxed, which is from an antibiotic. Back years prior to this diagnosis, I had pneumonia and it was getting pretty bad. And so took a medication, later went back after this and looked it up. Sure enough, there's liver warnings on it. So that's the best I can come up with, as my liver's had some trauma and it's healing, and I believe it will heal, and people need to hear that the body is made to heal.
Yes.
But taking medications, health doesn't come in a prescription bottle.
Yep, petroleum solutions. That's really what they were trying to do at that point. Petroleum solutions. So if let's say the HIV virus doesn't exist and they're doing this trauma to their body parts, what are they testing positive for? If you're saying there could be something there.
Yeah, and that's it. That's an interesting question. What is it? Why? We have to distinguish too. It gets a little complicated because the test is in a lab, and so it's outside of the body. And what they're saying is that the test is reacting to a specific antibody. Now, whether that's true or not remains to be seen, because some of our colleagues have done research into this and found a similar problem to the whole issue of viral existence, is to say that there aren't these specific things in our body called antibodies at all. They're nowhere near as specific as what is being claimed.
Oh, wow.
They're just generic classes. They may have some consistencies, but we know that it's like, if we look at collagen inside my body and collagen inside your body, there's likely to be massive similarities. They're going to be based on the same models. But with antibodies, they are more like a class of things rather than these absolute specific entities that they've claimed. So what is it? Well, I think the giveaway is that, as I mentioned earlier, antibodies are not a yes-no thing. They're set at a certain level. The assay has to be set at a certain concentration. So that's why with certain tests, they do dilutions, basically, because otherwise every single person they tested would be positive. So what I'm saying is that with something like HIV, we will all test positive or not positive, depending on what the dilution is set at. So that gives away a clue that these things cannot be specific to some virus, because anyone has the presence of them. What they are, well, hey, I would say if we look at something like HIV positivity and we say what does seem to be associated with things like IV drug use, liver damage, kidney failure, general wasting syndromes, malnutrition, etc., that the best we can say is that it's related to some sort of inflammatory response, that these proteins are increasing in our system as a response to inflammation, and they may be part of a healing mechanism. And perhaps these things can persist for years afterwards as the body tries to complete its healing process, or otherwise the inflammation is still going, and maybe that's why they remain positive. But the key, I wouldn't get too focused on most antibodies, because the research we've done, and this is outside of HIV, but into all of these other antibodies that we've looked at, whether it's Epstein-Barr or so-called alpha-gal syndrome, or Lyme disease is one of the big ones that they're into now, all of these antibody assays they do have such poor correlation to the condition of the person that you're wasting your time. It's like Lyme disease is a classic example.
Oh, yeah.
The vast majority of people that have so-called positive Lyme disease antibodies don't have any symptoms. They're completely well. And this is really common in the antibody research.
So hold on, because, we've done many shows on Lyme disease, the whole story of the government putting them in ticks and spreading it. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, so Lyme disease is not a diagnosis, because if you look up what the symptoms are, they're anything. So, they could be just fever and lethargy. It could be joint aches, it could be certain rashes, but none of these are specific entities. So again, it's just this generic kind of term. So instead what they've got is these antibody tests, which they say that's how you diagnose Lyme disease. The antibody tests are so farcical when you look at the scientific papers that they're not diagnostic. They don't tell you anything. So what it comes back to is you just say, well, what is the problem that the person has? Do they have a fever, or do they have low energy, or do they have a rash, or what is the particular problem? But I would say, firstly, that Lyme disease is not a specific disease, and you should never, ever label anyone with that. It's really problematic in terms of what happens next for that person. And I'd also challenge them to say, what is the diagnostic criteria here anyway? Because we looked at the original papers from the 1970s, and I think they took 32 people that they said had Lyme disease. They said the doctors agreed these people have Lyme disease. You know how many out of the 32 that they found the Borrelia bacteria in? Two out of 32. So 30 out of 32 they didn't find the bacteria in. But then they said that the Borrelia are the cause of the Lyme disease, and that they got into the body through a tick bite. But that's, again, it's completely collapses the entire narrative. That doesn't make sense.
We're in a testing epidemic. Like, people have symptoms. You get your symptoms grouped together. The doctor gives you a test. The test sends you to the medication with a diagnosis. I mean,
and here's something else fascinating. In New Zealand, we have the biting insects here as well, and creepy crawlies, mosquitoes and various
hobbits.
Things. Yeah. But we're not allowed to make that diagnosis here. You're not allowed to have Lyme disease in New Zealand because they say we don't have it. So it's the same with malaria. We have exactly the same mosquitoes here, and they're everywhere. But we're not allowed to make that diagnosis because we're not in the right area, apparently. So yeah, Lyme disease is completely farcical.
What?
Again, yeah, we have presentations on this, and it's really sad to see how they invented a condition out of thin air, and then brought in the whole bioweapon narrative. That's how it got into Lyme, Connecticut, was from their offshore island where they were doing these experiments. Yeah, we've done all the research into that, looked at every single paper that came out of there, and that's not a specific disease.
So if the whole thing now is it's dementia. The people either get Parkinson's or dementia from Lyme disease. You're saying that's totally separate.
No, there are other reasons we're getting that, and one massive problem is aluminium poisoning, and that's largely through vaccines, which contain huge amounts of aluminium, unfortunately. And yeah, there's this big elephant in the room now where we have all of these neurodegenerative issues, Parkinson's, dementia, and so forth, and the medical establishment scratching its head going, we don't know why this is. Or they make up stories about genetics or vascular disease, etc., when people are being poisoned, basically. And Professor Chris Exley in the UK, he was doing excellent research into this area until he mentioned vaccines, and they stripped all of his funding from him and basically exiled him from his university. So,
Wow.
The aluminium industry it's a fascinating one, and they're doing everything they can to protect it. So I mean, that's not the only reason people get neurodegenerative problems, but it's one of the biggies.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, it's just like, everything is a psyop, dude. It's just everything's a psyop. So, Autumn, excuse me. May I ask, do you have children?
I do. I have
Okay.
two.
So what I find interesting is that both of you are part of groups that are very passionate about vaccines. Very passionate. I deal with it in my own life, with my children. Very passionate. And it's what I call this agent, I didn't make it up, but it's called Agent Smith effect, where somebody is just, you're having a conversation with them and so all of a sudden you introduce them to some data that they don't like, and you become Agent Smith from the Matrix, and it becomes very nasty very quickly, and they start calling you all these names and stuff like that. Auburn, what was that like? Autumn, why do I keep calling you Auburn? Sorry about that.
That's
Autumn,
a new one. I gotta say, most of the
I'm
time
sorry.
I'm called Amber.
I'm a little slow. I'm sorry about that, Autumn.
No, you're all good.
But what was your experience with that as you talked to other mothers, friends, and stuff like that? What was the reception you got?
Well, my kids are older now, so a lot of these conversations happened years ago. They're like 14 and almost 18 now. But I was in what you could call like a crunchy moms group. So I had quite a few friends that were kind of already on the same page. But I actually played a role in helping wake up some of my friends and some family. My mom and I are actually fairly outspoken about this subject. And so, I actually, I had people willing to look at the information. That was obviously at the time when I believed in viruses. So I can see now how much more sinister this whole agenda is that when there's no virus and we're vaccinating for, I used to think at least, well, okay, even though they don't really work, like maybe a small percentage, right? And it's like, no, there's no viruses. So, I mean, gosh, we're just literally injecting poisons. But yeah, I was able to help wake some people up, thankfully, and some of them are still awake today and have chosen to decline. But yeah, at times it brings about interesting conversations, and I love to have this topic on the podcast as well. So yeah, I believe that we need to be vocal about it, and sometimes people are receptive, and sometimes they're not.
Going back to the effects, I have a daughter who's autistic. I don't want to get too much into any of that, but when we bring up the correlation possibly between vaccines and autism, which is a very hot topic right now. And, in California, I think it's 1 in 4 now. It's like 1 in 5. It's like an insane number. And what I find very interesting is if I go to you, hey man, if you go to this kids park, there's a 1 in 5 chance your child could get kidnapped. No one would go to that park. No one would ever go to that park. But if I go, hey man, you got 1 in 5 chance that this could affect your child's life forever, even though they're making great strides in that with different medications. Why do you think, as a mom, why do you think other mothers, Autumn, are so resistant to just hearing the other side of the discussion?
I think a lot of it probably boils down to fear, mostly, and then obviously ignorance. And some people just aren't willing to challenge the medical monopoly in the system. They believe it, they need it. It's a crutch. It's too scary to look elsewhere. It's too scary to go off on your own. If you deny medicine, what do you have left? How am I supposed to combat these illnesses and disease? What more am I supposed to do? I found in some of the conversations that it's a background of fear there that's actually running the show. And so, I came from a place where I educated myself, and I am adamant about learning to steward and take charge of my health and my children's health. And I've just come to realize some people just don't have that they don't have that either desire, or they don't have that confidence, or they just haven't been exposed, because I have met some that once they were exposed to the education, or they finally crossed over and watched a video or listened to a lecture, and they finally saw and understood a little bit, then they felt a bit more empowered. So some people, I think they just stay in the dark on purpose, and they don't want to see it. And and so I don't know. That's my thoughts on that.
It's so interesting, because sounds like both you and your wife, Mark, did your own research. And it's very interesting to me that I just got in a giant argument with a guy that I love at the comedy club I play at. And he just kept yelling at me, "You do your own research." Yeah, you're one of those guys who do their own research. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing, dude. Jimmy Dore's joke is, it's called reading. That's what we did for hundreds of years, if not thousands. We read to learn. And now you're just accepting people in this of authority who are making money off you.
Yeah, another way to say that would have been, you don't believe everything you're told.
Yeah, 100%. And it's very interesting. I mean, you're very brave for that, Autumn. Mark, you were in the medical profession, or you had stepped away. Your wife was on it. What was the feedback from the other doctors? Was there? I mean, obviously, you said she became the most hated, but even like on a personal friendship level, where there's people that really were like, "Hey, dude, get away from me with that misinformation."
Yeah, well, she was ejected incredibly quickly from the profession, and all of her old friends no longer spoke to her, because what became apparent too with the conversations she had when she first started speaking out was that some of her colleagues and friends were worried that they would lose their jobs based on what Sam was saying, essentially. Going after these big pharma narratives, etc. And some of them were in positions where big pharma was funding their medical centers, etc. So, yeah, it was not well accepted by the medical colleagues at all. And we basically have no doctor friends left, in terms of doctors who are still in the system. It's almost like if they have a medical license, there's not a compatibility that we can even have a conversation with them, because they don't want to talk about this stuff. And I've made attempts. I ran into a doctor once in the street that I used to work with, tried to get a basic conversation going with him. This was in the middle of the COVID fraud. He literally said, "I'm not going to talk about any of this, change the subject." And I said, "This is the most important thing going on." And he just stormed off. He didn't want to know. So, yeah, but I think for us, it was such a great decision to get out of that world and do our own research, because subsequently the health of our family was vastly improved, and we were able to take that knowledge and give it back to the world, basically, and say, here's how to do things without the medico-pharma system. And here's a whole lot of narratives that are incorrect, and we'll show you why.
The final question that I want to ask you guys is, the PCR test is connected to so many different things. We've had people come on here talking about, and I don't want to get into whether he's right or wrong, but connected to the DNA test and stuff like that. Sometimes I think that the guy who invented the PCR test somewhat got a Nobel Peace Prize for giving them kind of a tool for them to be able to push a narrative. I'm not saying that he's a bad guy. I do feel, because when COVID was coming out, his videos were everywhere. that he seemed tormented at the end. Every interview he did, he always had his head down. He was playing with his hair, and he seemed tormented at the end. What are your thoughts on the PCR test? We've had people come on. You could look for everything you want, but like, is there kind of like something kind of dangerous and evil about it that it's allowed them to basically diagnose the entire world for whatever they want?
Yeah, and Carey Mullis did become really tortured by his own invention, and he made it clear from the start that it was not a diagnostic tool. It was not able to give information about the health status of a human. And he said, look, it's a useful research tool. And he said exactly what it was, which was a molecular amplification technique. It was a technique of taking tiny amounts of genetic material, which is often what we deal with in biological substances. We have lots of proteins and liquids and things, but tiny little amounts of DNA. And Carey Mullis worked out a way to amplify it up so we could really detect it in these tiny little samples. But he was clear that it was not something that was going to be used in clinical medicine. He never saw that application, or if he did, and some people will say, well, he issued various patents and stuff he applied for. I think he quickly realized the folly of going down those routes. And that's why when he was asked to write something about HIV, he became suspicious because he asked where the paper was, the scientific publication that showed that HIV existed, and nobody could show it to him. They just said, oh, it's been established in the body of literature. And he said, well, that's not how science works. There must be an original paper where they isolated the virus and showed that it existed, but they didn't. So he became an HIV skeptic after that because he could see it wasn't scientific. So, and Mullis was clear that the technique cannot be misused, but it can only be misinterpreted. So what he meant was that it does what it does. It will do a repetitious process of creating more DNA. That's what it will do. And whether it's specific or not, I don't know. It's hard to make comments on that at a molecular level. But as I say, Mullis didn't say it was a diagnostic tool. So I think that's how it's been misinterpreted. You could argue that it's been misused because it's been deliberately used in this way. And but yeah, in the scientific literature, when you read a virology paper, you can definitely see it's being misinterpreted. So, for instance, Autumn will be told that her viral load of hepatitis C is, and then they give a figure. Now, all they're doing is taking her blood and performing PCR on it, and they're amplifying certain sequences. In her case, it's RNA, which they're converting to do a DNA amplification because they say that hepatitis C is an RNA virus. So they're looking at an RNA level of a short sequence that appears in her blood, and then they're saying to her, that's your viral load, when in fact it's nothing of the sort. It's just a particular concentration of RNA in the blood at that time. And if we had Carey Mullis here, he would say that's exactly what it is. He would say nothing about it, whether that showed the existence of a virus or anything about whether Autumn had a disease or not.
And it goes up and down all the time. I tracked it quite consistently in the first couple of years. And I had a doctor in the beginning, a gastroenterologist, say, oh, well, it's, right at this level. So you've probably had this for about 2 to 3 years. And I'm thinking, okay, what happened 2 to 3 years ago? And then I don't think anybody's ever done what I've done, because I actually, obviously didn't take the medication, and I headed in the opposite direction into the holistic alternative world to see what I could accomplish. And during those first couple years, I was taking my blood a lot, and I was watching it go up and down all the time, sometimes much higher than what he said, and then watching it drop much lower. So it was all over the place. So I think He's unfortunately completely unaware of what that test does to your numbers.
So my final question is, let's say someone's been diagnosed with HIV, they're taking the medication for a long time, and then they decide to stop. Is that a death sentence in your humble opinion?
It depends on the particulars of the case, and it can be problematic because the medications that they take are not antiviral because they're not acting against any virus, but they are anti-metabolites. So they do suppress normal cellular function. The problem with that interpretation of what happens is that, say they are unwell and have an inflammatory response going on, the medications suppress the cells and therefore it appears to be effective because the inflammation then reduces. And the person may say that they feel better in that case. And when it's nothing of the sort. Now, that's the same problem coming back to say what they told Autumn her viral load was. If they gave her the course of medications at a cost of $80,000, they would then probably say months down the track that she had, quote, seroconverted, and they'd say she got better because they'd repeat the PCR and say, look, we can't even detect the virus anymore, when all they'd done is suppress all of her liver cells. So the cells are not functioning like they normally do, and the RNA levels are suppressed along with a whole lot of other stuff. And then they say, hey, presto, we made you better. So, yeah, you have to be very careful about the particulars of the situation. And someone who's been on HIV medication for a long time may report that they feel worse when they come off it. And don't forget, too, it often comes back to the psychological expectations. So the people I've witnessed who do the best, who are given the so-called HIV diagnosis, are the ones who are instantly skeptical, basically don't start the medications, and then 20 years later, they're absolutely fine because they do everything else to improve their health, but they don't take pharmaceuticals. Versus the person that still buys into this model, the virus model, starts taking the medications, comes off the medications, goes back to the doctor, has a blood test, and the doctor says, whoa, your viral load, it's through the roof, and that's based on the PCR test and the fallacies of that we've just talked about. And that person then thinks, oh my goodness, big mistake, I should never have stopped the medications, the virus is now going to kill me.
I have one more question. I can't remember it now. It was in my head. Okay. This has been an excellent episode. Wow. Excellent episode. Damn. One more time, Autumn, can you tell us one more time where our listeners can find you?
Absolutely. AutumnMcLees.com. Podcast is Know Better, Do Better, and on social media platforms at autumn.mclees.
Excellent. Dr. Mark, can you tell us where we can find you, and also tell us where your wife's YouTube channel is so we can all go check that out as well?
Yeah, well, interestingly, the YouTube channel, we've been able to upload videos again recently.
Yeah,
5 years.
Thank God.
5 years after they were banned. So it's, something's changed, but obviously they're moving to new narratives now and aren't so worried. But it's best if people come to drsambailey.com. That's where we have all of the information, the videos, the essays, the stuff, the free downloads, etc. Use the search function. You can check any topic, whether it's measles, chickenpox, HIV. We've covered all of this stuff. But yep, she has the YouTube channel, which has been heavily suppressed in the past, Substack as well. But as I say, it's safest to go to drsambailey.com because it's the only place we can guarantee it's not censored and you will get the original content.
Okay, I remember what it is. Did you find it weird that when they said right when everyone was going to start taking the COVID shot, that they said they cured HIV or AIDS or whichever it was, and then there wasn't a giant celebration? Like I thought that would be one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of all time, and it just seemed like everyone just moved on.
one thing we've come to realize is that whatever is appearing in the corporate media is part of their overall staging, part of their overall advertising, etc. And yeah, it's whenever you see something, you have to wonder why it's appearing. So yeah, it was interesting, and a whole lot of stuff has gone on in the last 6 years in terms of so-called press releases and everything. But no, it's all highly staged, and unfortunately, it's not a good place to go for information, as people may have established, the corporate media.
All right. I just want to say, both of you, thank you for coming on. Doctor, I know that you're in New Zealand, so I'm sure it's like crazy time in the morning for you. So I appreciate both of you guys coming on the show and joining us, and it was an all-time banger. So thank you guys very much. Don't leave. Let's just break down the episode. All right, guys. Welcome. Great show. What'd you guys think? What'd you guys think
It was
of
weird.
Dr. Mark?
It was weird being next to you all while you're hard.
Well,
You were stoked.
that's very weird
You were
because
very
we had a woman on the show.
Why is it weird now?
Well, because she was.
I've always wanted to talk to a duathlon guy. I gotta be honest.
That was definitely weird. That was he got a little uncomfortable there. I was like, it's just a joke. We're in America.
I wasn't even. That's what it sounded like.
No,
No, it did
we all
sound
looked at
like
each
that.
other.
And I know if I didn't ask, people would be like, why didn't you ask him about the Jew?
Why did you have a duathlon guy?
Yeah, why didn't you ask about a duathlon guy? Guys know this is one of my favorite subjects. That guy is great.
He might be the best.
Yeah,
person
they're
on
all
that
great.
subject we've
Yeah,
had.
but this might be the Michael Jordan of this discussion.
I think so. Yeah.
Is
I'd
there a
love to talk to his wife. I wonder,
Oh, yeah.
his wife
Yes, yeah.
sounds like she's just an assassin.
Is there a reason you find this to be? Because it's definitely your favorite topic. Every team we have,
It's right up there,
terrain,
yeah,
but
for
like,
sure.
is it because you were kind of on top of it? Because it's literally like, look at how fucking stupid we are that we believe in viruses. Why is it your favorite? Because it really is. Like every time we have it, you're like,
Okay, I'll
about
tell
it.
you why. Because I'm dumb, and I don't know any of the scientific part of it. So when I get people on who know all of it, it gets me excited. Because I just did a show in Tampa Bay, and it was great. It was a lot of fun, But I said I didn't believe in viruses, and he was like, he kind of gave me a
Who's he here?
what was it, Jack Dorsey? I did a show, yeah, man.
Jack Dorsey.
Hold on,
Huh?
no, I got it wrong. Shut up, Johnny. Thanks for fucking.
I was we were
It was-
excited.
it was
Thanks for
Ken
making
Dorsey.
this. What?
It was Ken Dorsey, Miami quarterback.
No, it wasn't Ken Dorsey, Miami quarterback. You piece of shit. It was Danny Jones. Sorry, Danny. My
Okay.
apologies.
Completely different. Human.
And by the way, real quick,
That's a big show.
Danny Jones is an excellent interviewer.
Yeah. Is that out yet?
It was supposed to be out this week. It hasn't come out yet. So, I mean, we'll see
That's a
what.
big show.
How nice is his actual studio? Because
Bro.
what you see on TV, it already looks. I'm like, where is this full recording out of? How nice is his actual?
Well, he's on a set, like a proper set, right? Like he
No,
had, like-
it's kind of like he has like a big building, and just like Joe Rogan's thing, his studio is like the smallest part of the building.
because I saw a picture
It's an
of you guys
office
together.
within like I don't know how to. It's not a warehouse. It's just it's like somewhere where you'd see like a it's kind of like when I did Ninjas or Butterflies, right?
Oh, they have a
this
great- yeah, they have a
big
great-
this big building and this small room for their podcast. Same thing. Those Florida boys are crushing it, dude.
Oh yeah.
Dude, we could be in Florida, guys, and we could all have our own studio there,
And not
we
pay.
could all record.
State income tax.
We could all record the same podcast from our own rooms.
That'd be fucking amazing.
We wouldn't even have to be near each other. We could be like a band that hates each other and don't want. They're all playing separate parts of the stage. We'd never have to see each other. Even though I love you guys, right? It would be like you go in your studio, I'm going in mine. Guys, welcome up. What's up, Johnny? What's up?
That's what Stern does now, dude. He's on like fiber or whatever, connected to everybody else, so it's instant. You instantly you don't have to worry about stepping on people. But and the quality's pristine.
But he does it from home, right?
Yeah, he doesn't like to talk about it, but yeah, of
course he
It
doesn't.
seems like that. Yeah,
Yeah. And he's just staring at a screen.
it must be. Yeah, it must be.
There's no way he's inviting people to his house.
No. The guest. No.
Do you think he makes love in a hazmat suit? Like
I
he's
feel bad.
so
I feel bad for him.
He's so germophobic. Him, Howie Mandel.
He's like got mental illness, Stern, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I didn't get mad at him during COVID, even though other stuff he was saying was fully stupid. I didn't get mad because I knew like when I was in his studio, he just would freeze out.
He's so disappointing. Yeah. Like as far on like the way he's just started sucking celebrity dick. I mean, it's like, damn. Because I defended him against the Opie, because I loved Opie and Anthony too, but I always kind of was like, no, Stern's okay. But man.
Well, it's like most of your liberal comics in the 90s, they're all progressives now. Because the inability your brain calcifies in its views.
What do you mean they stayed progressives? Is that what you're saying?
Well, they became liberal and now it's progressivism. I mean, it's extreme.
Progressed to progress. Yeah, it's like
it's progressed to progressivism because they still have that the right and the religious people are crazy people. If you go to samtripoli.com. I'm going to be at the Well. I'm going to be in Bakersfield, Yuma, Hollywood, Batavia, Toronto. Who else do I got? Dallas, Fort Worth, Huntington Beach, Albuquerque. Yeah, man. And then we got some more. I got to put those dates up for Kansas City, but dates coming. All right. And then, of course, Word War Debate. It's the UFC of debating. We've set it up. It's happening. And of course, after that, Word War, the big thing I want you guys to know about is Word War Debate Contender Series. You guys can, 32 contestants vying for who's the greatest debater. And the 2 finalists go to the live show. So join now, guys. Trust me. Join now. Get in.
Yep. There's 32 competitors, and I'm gonna be one of them. So there's 31.
Oh snaps, dude! I would love to see you debate.
I would love that.
Hey man, let us stay, dog. Immigrants are people too. Oh shit! My ice is at my house.
I would love to see you debate Candace Owens on immigration. I would love that.
Not Candace. I can't debate against Candace. I might drop the N-word if she ends up winning.
Debaters, you can't debate any of them. Debating is a whole nother level that you don't even understand.
It's so hard.
Because so much of it is just been on podcasts
too.
And people yelling at each other. But the best of the best, bro, you got to come with cases, files.
It's so hard to keep all that in your head.
Dude,
man.
I was blown away,
so
dude.
Do you think this one's going to be way higher level as in people preparing for this World War debate?
Well, they're doing it's going to be an interesting because they want you to actually show you can debate on something you don't know what you're debating on. So they kind of want to see how good you are in the moment.
Oh, wait, that's what it's going to be now?
No, it's going to be a little bit of everything.
Okay.
They'll know as they go. It will change probably each round.
Wait, so are you saying one debate will be impromptu and then another one will be prepared remarks, or that they will have sections within each debate that are impromptu versus
They have
prepared?
it all worked out.
Okay. So you don't know.
I'm just a showrunner.
Okay.
Go back to samtripoli.com. Guys, samtripoli.com. All my premium content's there, guys. I'm telling you, you're getting the best in conspiracy podcast content. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the show is evergreen, meaning it's not current. You can listen to it 2 years from now. That's why the show does really well. The premium content is very topical.
Yeah, like right there, cartel stuff. You want to go listen to cartel stuff about Mexico and stuff? You already went over it.
Yep. It's crazy. Yep, the Union of the Unwanted is great. Do all that cheap. You get about 3 a week, dude. I'm trying. Some weeks I get so slammed I get you 1 or 2. But for the most part, I'm trying to do 3. Talk about cash daddies, Johnny.
Yeah, been killing it there. Howie is true expert in the field of finance retirement. You can learn. I mean,
real quick. Sorry, Johnny.
No dumb questions.
After this, we're gonna get into the State of the Union. We'll be talking about the State of the Union after this.
Yeah. So stick around for that. Howie, he'll ask. He answers regularly on there the most basic questions to really advanced stuff. So he's the guy to. He's the real brains behind the operation on Cash Daddies. Go check it out. Good community too.
Go down. Chaos Twins. I got some stuff today I'm going to be looking at when I have a moment in my life. T-shirts.
That was just an unloading of emotion right there.
Yeah, I mean 100%. I get my news from Sam Tripoli. Johnny wants that on the front, so I'm going to work on that.
I love it.
So you can get the either front and back
on the front of your body, preferably.
Yeah, okay, on the front of your body, and then the poster. the sweatshirts. You can all get there. It's a great way to support the show. What else we got? Gold and silver, Mineral King, Pat Meltich want to help you get rid of your parasites and help your soil. Alcure Hydrogen Brown Gas. Hydrogen is how you stay younger. Our good friends at Harley Ray, if you're looking for candles, crystal, sage, anything, best place to go. Chemical Free Body, took it today. Love it. I take it every day. Tim James is killing it. Joel Staley, EMF rocks. I got an idea. You remember the idea I told you about, Johnny? Don't say it out loud. I did, even though I did 1,000 times.
Yes,
I'm going to talk to him about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Okay. Prometheus, if you're looking for off the. So, did you see that guy? So, you know how everyone's going into different welfare states?
Yeah.
Like all these welfare scams.
Yeah.
This guy went into somewhere in Jersey with Orthodox Jews, found out they're running scams. He got all of his shit shut down. He lost his Patreon, all this shit.
Oh shit! Wasn't fucking decentralized.
I told him to go check out Prometheus.
You told him?
Yeah, but I don't know if he got it because he has his new website up. Brain Supreme, if you on or off.
On. This week's on, baby.
I love it. I love On XG. Great job snowboarding. You're getting good at
Oh,
it.
thank you. Yeah, I'm trying. You see, these knees aren't that bad.
I know. I'm very impressed.
I know what you think about my hockey jersey. I heard Johnny wasn't appreciative of me
Why?
wearing a hockey
This
jersey.
is the only Mexican guy with a Blackhawks jersey.
Dude, if I'm gonna wear a
He
hockey
doesn't
jersey,
even know what that team is.
I
He
just knew
just
it was-
gets cheap
What
jerseys.
city? What city they play in?
Chicago.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. That's fine, dude. You know, he just gets free
know.
jerseys. That's all it is. Or
Well,
cheap ones.
What a great time to wear them though. When literally America beat Canada, people wouldn't stop talking to me about it. Like I knew.
A lot of snow up there. Huh?
I felt-
Wait. So people were just bringing up the hockey
People
team?
kept talking to me like I fucking knew it. I was like,
You're
what
like,
the
that's so
worst.
funny. You think I know hockey and I'm American.
You should have just been like, no complainte.
Dude, I'm just housekeeping on the hill. That's all I'm doing. Do you need new sheets or towels? New sheets and towels? State of the Union, what did you guys think?
Long. It was a long. State
Dude
of the
ran the
Union.
light for sure.
Didn't see it. So
Trump
I'm
just
not-
ran the fuck.
see it.
He pulled a Ralphie May and just kept going.
You know, I mean, obviously good for him. He can keep going, but at his age, do you think you could talk for that long?
I think he's a unicorn, dude.
He's a robust human. That's
He's
for
an
sure.
interesting guy, dude. I don't like everything he's doing. There's a lot of stuff I have problems with, but man, that guy is very interesting. He's unique as shit. You can hate him, that's fine, but he is unique, dude.
Yeah.
You know, there's nobody like him to be 80 and just be able to talk for 2 hours.
Is unbelievable.
I'm telling you who's getting fired, though, his hair lady.
Oh yeah.
Oh, dude.
That
You have
thing
some
was
problem?
out there.
Oh,
Dude, that
no.
chick is gone. Sorry, gay guy. We tried to do DEI. Look at my fucking hair.
Do you think he's like that all day, like at the house, or do you think it's the second he kind of walks on stage and then he feels the
According to
people?
Shane Gillis, he's always like that. Like he's always like
That's even more
bombastic.
impressive. That's even more impressive
That's
to just
just
know
him
that
being
this
him,
was
dude.
just on all the
But
time.
you know, like that Somalian lady in the audience yelling at him, "You kill Americans." It's just we've gone away from civility, dude. It's we deserve better theater actors.
Yes.
Oh, we had a
Like
huge
there's no
theater actor there.
civility anymore. You know what that's gonna do? That gonna fuck stand up up because people are like, if Omar can do it, I can do it too, and just gonna start yelling at people. We're already getting out of control with these live streamers. Have you been seeing them? They're bugging people now.
Oh yeah, that's they've been doing that,
They need to stop that.
What do you mean by that?
bugging people like the
Like
streamers.
you'll be sitting down eating by
Oh, yes,
yourself, and
yes,
they'll get in your face and try to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's how you get shot.
Yeah, stabbed.
We've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like time to go,
It's
faggot.
all, I hate it. I mean, it's these Gen Z fucks too that don't have like social cues. you
And
know?
they've never been hit. They don't get spanked anymore. They don't know what pain is.
Well, and another thing is you can't. Back then, you used to be able to hit someone, and there was no recording, so you got away with it. Like you might get assault,
now-
but
yeah.
now
Yeah, but
everything is
hold on.
recorded. You can't really hit someone anymore at all because it's
Not if
lit.
he's harassing you. Everyone cheers on the people punching him.
Yeah, but still harassment. Still, you're
Dude,
not allowed.
what
to-
it is untalented people trying to fucking get clout. They have nothing else to do. It's the same thing with these trolls on comedian stand-up. Most of them are failed stand-ups. So they just start going after what they dreamed of.
I don't understand that impulse, right?
Well-
like, why wouldn't, I don't know. Why would you want to?
Because you're so angry that you can't, that you're not allowed to do the thing you dreamed of doing.
Sad.
Yeah, and there's just so many just angry people hate their life that they love blood. So they just love that, and then you just have to get darker and darker, and then you're in some fucking deep, dark, empty fucking segment of the internet.
It's called the YouTube comment section. Yeah, that's where you can find those people.
Are you talking about this idiot right here that you watched? That
He's one of them.
He just got slapped because he's just trolling.
Dude, you gotta be an idiot to fucking press that guy's wife.
These are animals. Yeah, it's Larry. It's Larry. Whatever. Larry Wheels or whatever.
You can't say animals about black people. They get you. They don't like that.
Yeah, he can say he's.
Oh yeah,
Mexican,
that's right. No, you got
Yeah, I got a little bit of leeway.
You know,
I got Tourette's, dude. My bad.
Yeah, there you go.
Tourette's.
You're out.
this guy's gonna get slapped the shit out of.
But honestly, isn't that the best case scenario for him? Like as a streamer now,
Yeah, but now that sets he's gonna get punched all the time. That's gonna be his thing.
maybe that's
he
his
gets
thing.
punched
Yeah,
in the face.
I'm the guy that gets open hand slapped by better men than I am.
You know, and Rampage, talk about trying to live a 20-year-old's life in your 50s.
Right.
Wait, that wasn't Rampage.
No,
was
the
it?
guy
was
that hit
another
him,
one.
but the
Yeah.
guy's party, I think it was
Yeah,
Rampage.
he got hit twice at the same party. Do you think you would have done any of this clout shit, young Sam, 20-year-old
no,
Tripoli? You
that's
don't
not
think
me, dude.
Yeah.
I remember when I was young and I was at UNLV and my friend Heath, there's some fucking Europeans there, and I started talking to them in a European accent, and he's like, "You sound like a fucking asshole. Quit that shit." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, dude. I didn't know."
That's a good friend.
Yeah.
That's a good friend.
Yeah, and
Truly. You
like,
need that.
I don't
as a young
dude,
person.
Listen. On stage, I talk a lot of shit. Off stage, I just want to be chill. And
You
be
couldn't have seen yourself doing that man on the street shit though, like
No,
one of the people.
do you guys? You remember, man? You remember Street Smarts, the show?
No.
What was it called? Street Smarts, or the man where they just interviewed people, man on the street style?
The first person I remember doing that was Tom Green. I know people did it before that.
There was
Like,
a show-
Jaywalking was like that.
There was a show where you would interview people on the show. They offered me to be the guy to interview in the
On TV or a web
yeah,
series?
and I turned it down.
Smart. That was really smart.
I was an idiot back then.
Why? What was your thinking at the time?
I could do better.
What did you end up doing?
Wide World of Spike, and
That
then
was good.
Yeah, that was
That was a
great.
real
But
show.
that was it's Johnny. Here's the thing about me on television. Every time I do it, every time I did it, I got great ratings. I killed it, and then the show got canceled. The industry hates me. They hated me since the beginning.
Well, you're not the kind of person that suits like at all. You're kind of a chaos. You got that chaos energy that we were talking about with Milo or something, and they don't like that.
They don't like that. They like to
Okay.
control you,
In
and
fact,
they
that's
also
a good
like
example, really, of Milo. Like we were talking about him. In that
Milo's the
context.
extreme. He's
Right.
like,
But
he
the
goes
same
for
context
blood.
we were talking about.
Yeah,
I
he
won't
goes
mention
for
it, but
blood. I like Milo.
I do too. He's.
I would
very
love
funny.
to have him on debate because it would be so funny.
He's very funny. He's so funny.
Like on a different topic, you guys watch Tucker with that Israel guy with his
Yeah,
name?
I pulled a bunch
Huckabee?
of clips for
BS.
Yeah,
Huckabee looks like an idiot, dude.
Oh, I didn't expect Tucker to actually like push
Tucker,
him.
what do you guys think about Tucker? I have a real to me he seems like he's a genuine truth seeker now, and
Well, he
but
wears
I
a
hesitate.
Kabbalah wrist. You know, like.
But he said,
But
he claims to be a Christian.
Johnny, let's say this. What if Israel wants everybody to hate him, which is a notion out there? Doesn't he kind of fit into that?
Yeah, I suppose.
You know? And he's saying things that most people get deplatformed for. Like this guy talking about all these Jews in New Jersey being on welfare. You know? I mean, like he gets deplatformed.
But why is he not serving that same?
The guy
goal?
who I'm not going to say I trust him, but that guy leading the Republican candidates for Florida governor,
Yeah, I can't remember what's his name.
like Fishburne or something like that. He 2 years ago was defending Israel. So I mean, people learn and they change, like Dana did. Dana was very much critical of Israel, but she thought everything was anti-Semitic. So I forget what the show was. I forget what we were watching something, and they sent in. It was something to do with one of the prisoners on hijack, and they sent in guards and one of the guard, like he's a volatile prisoner, and they send 2 guards, and one of them was a female guard. I'm like, why would you send a female guard? And she goes, "You're so sexist. You're such a misogynist. You know that, right?" I go, "Yeah, I know that." She goes, "That's not good." I go, "It's great, actually. It's a great thing." So I lose all the female listeners.
There.
Yeah, the State of the Union was like, it's.
What I didn't see it. What do you have to say about Iran?
I didn't watch a lot of it. I just watched clips. When were we talking about it? How he was like, "Yeah, I think we're going out over this weekend." I'm like, when do we give a schedule for war? Yeah. Like, it's almost like I think they tell each other so the important people can hide, and everybody else gets slaughtered.
Yeah, there was a time when that was part of like chivalry or whatever. It was the kind of like, but that modern warfare is supposed to be antithetical to everything about modern warfare. It's, like you said, telegraphing. It's like doesn't make it.
We're coming now. Yeah. Hide in your bunkers. I don't know, dude. Now they got this poll. Trump is polling the lowest out any president ever. I
saw that on
CNN, Maybe, but who are you interviewing? Are you interviewing people at the Minneapolis riots? Is that who you're interviewing? Because it's definitely not the Democrats.
Yeah, it was the CNN twink I saw talking about it, and he was like,
"They love twinks, huh?
Oh boy, do they!
They just love to." I wonder how many of our figure skating guys just got thrown off because they got trauma the night before in the Olympic Village. They just got lit up and they just couldn't land it right because they were so okay.
Well, they had a lot of they'd used. I mean, at least they were using protection. They ran out of condoms.
They ran out of condoms. Really?
It's so funny.
Yeah,
they put a story about how they're running out of condoms, and they had this one female figure skater going, "The Olympic Village is so much fun. It's just such a great time. I'm having the time of my life." They're like, "Well, we know who used up all the condoms."
If you're like a fit 23-year-old guy, that's where you want to be. Isn't
Oh my God! Why wouldn't you, dude?
Oh.
You had the best athletes in the world boning. Like the amount of piston action going on there.
We could get a real.
Everybody's tired the next day for their event. That's why everybody's crashing. That's why all the figure skaters kept falling because they were just getting rocked the night before and they're tired.
The Chinese learning some new moves, because they only got
those Chinese figure skaters are literally like fucking robots, dude.
Who's leading?
No,
America, right?
It's over.
But America took it with most gold.
No, I think Norway had the most gold.
Which is crazy because we always dominate and we're not dominating like we used to because we're fat now.
Let's see. Norway dominated with a record 41 total medals. Ooh. The U.S. was second with 33 medals. Norway had 18 gold. We had 12 gold, 12 silver, 9 bronze. Italy, the host nation, was.
Who had the worst Olympics, do you think?
Mexico.
The worst Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, outside of Israel, who got 0 golds and got disqualified for lying. They literally got disqualified for lying.
I'm trying to hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to look and see. That's not even a question you can really ask.
I'll tell you, who it was Canada. Canada had the worst Olympics, even if they won a bunch of shit. They lost hockey.
Yeah,
even though they played better.
Male and female.
And male and female. And they got busted cheating in curling, which is my favorite sport.
That guy, yeah. They actually pissed off a Canadian. You know he must have been cheating.
How do you cheat in curling? They had a Mexican in there?
You can't touch it after it goes
so
over the
you
line.
release it, and then you kind of go bink, and you give it more power.
You're not allowed to touch the stone after it goes over the line. Let's see.
I don't know why that sport isn't televised more because everyone loves it.
I love it.
Like I would watch, like if it's summer and there's just nothing but baseball on, you're not a baseball person.
It actually is on TV, by the way. Sometimes nobody gives a shit though in non-Olympics. Like
really?
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it on TV.
I was about to say it's like soccer during the World Cup. You guys only like that shit during the World Cup, just like you guys only like curling during the Winter Olympics. Other than that, no one gives a fuck.
The problem with American soccer is it's just not as good as the Euro soccer. And
MLS is not as good only because they have a salary cap. They have a structure where the league owns the teams. Technically, the owners don't own the teams, and it's because in the 90s they had these owners that were spending like crazy, and then other clubs that were just going out of business. Yeah. So they had to develop a system to make it sustainable, and it has worked. It's sustained and been successful.
So, do you think the biggest problem they have is Apple TV?
Well, they changed it now so that the games will be, you don't have to pay. So it's different now. But yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, that was a bad deal. But I think
it's a bad deal because it hit the games.
I mean, David Tepper, the guy who owns the Charlotte team, has $12 billion in the bank. He could pay and have all the, the best guys at the end of their career come play in the United States, but they won't let him. You only get 3 players that aren't subject to the salary cap, to simplify it. It's called designated players in MLS. And those 3 guys, you can pay whatever you want, basically. And then the rest of the team, and you have to have a certain number of Americans. You have international slots.
Oh, we're Chinese basketball?
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's because it's the league, the original mission of the league was to develop players
for the World Cup,
for the American pool. Yeah, for the World Cup.
But Mexico does the same thing because they
do.
They make you. I actually think that makes the game worse because it makes them not try enough because you're guaranteed in there because you need Americans. Yeah. In Europe, they don't have no. You don't. We
I don't
need
think
fucking
they should
5
have
Spaniards.
That.
It's whoever's the better.
Americans should get good enough to play. I don't think America will go. Where the fuck are the Americans? Like they're like, oh, is my team winning? That's all I want to see.